It wasn't pretty, but the Aggies got the W they needed on this episode of the Locked On Aggies podcast.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Aggies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Joey Ikes. Thanks so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. The Aggies got it done against the Miami Hurricanes on Saturday night in prime time in front of 107,000 people at Kyle Field. The final score 17-9. Not the prettiest game you've ever seen in your life, but a W, a desperately needed W nonetheless. This game was a defensive masterpiece from the Aggies. The Aggies defense generated 0 turnovers, had 0 sacks, but also surrendered 0 touchdowns. Now, it's pretty difficult in modern football, whether at the college level or the NFL level or even the high school level, to keep a team, especially one as highly ranked as Miami, out of the end zone for 60 minutes without getting turnovers or sacks or big plays like that. It's really, really difficult. Or without your offense just moving the ball over and over and your defense being extremely fresh. Extremely difficult to do that. And that's exactly what this A&M defense, led by defensive coordinator DJ Durkin, who needs his flowers this week for sure, did against Miami. And Miami has a quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke who most people consider to be a first or second round pick in the NFL draft next year. Again, 17-9, 0 touchdowns for Miami in this game. Extremely high-level defensive play. Very, very good situational defensive play from A&M in this game, in a game they desperately needed to win. And we're not going to rehash everything that happened last week with Appalachian State, but A&M needed this win very badly. And the week leading up to the game was probably less than ideal, and that culminated Friday night when 4 A&M players, including freshman defensive backs Denver Harris and Smoke Bowie, both who have been playing a significant amount of snaps in the secondary so far this year, were caught breaking curfew on Friday night before the game and were suspended from the game by A&M head coach Jimbo Fisher. And it's important to remember, especially in this situation, all 4 players involved, including wide receivers Evan Stewart and Chris Marshall, who were the other 2 players involved, are true freshmen. So we're talking about 18-year-old kids in this scenario. And one thing that we can all relate to when it comes to being 18, 19 years old is you're going to make mistakes. That's what happened. Evan Stewart, Chris Marshall, Smoke Bowie, and Denver Harris made a mistake last night, Friday night. And they had to learn from that mistake tonight by sitting on the sidelines and watching while their teammates needed them. The A&M defense, on top of not having Denver Harris and Smoke Bowie in this game, lost both Brian George and senior all leadership all SEC level safety Damani Richardson to targeting penalties that weren't even called on the field, but were buzzed down by the officiating crew in the press box. And A&M lost 2 of their starting defenders before the end of the first quarter, on top of losing 2 secondary players before the game even started. Add that to the fact that then by the time you get to the end of the game, Antonio Johnson has gone out with an injury as well. The other all-SEC, all-American level defensive back in the Aggie secondary goes down. And you've lost an entire secondary's worth of players over the course of the weekend. And the A&M defense still stood strong. Edgerrin Cooper played unbelievably at the linebacker position tonight. Shamar Turner was able to generate some pressure on Tyler Van Dyke and make him uncomfortable, along with Fidel Diggs and some other guys. LT Overton drew an extremely important holding penalty in the fourth quarter. It was a showing by the A&M defense that will not soon be forgotten. It was extremely important that they put up this kind of performance after what happened last week, and that's exactly what they were able to do. We're going to talk about the offense with new starting quarterback Max Johnson, but first, I'm going to tell you guys about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your pro and college betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. The Aggies offense struggled against Miami. When we had our podcast with Alex Dono this week of Locked On Canes, one of the things he told us was that the Miami defensive front was the strength of this team. And it showed. They put a lot of pressure on quarterback Max Johnson. They made him uncomfortable at times, and they made his life difficult. But the thing that separated this game from last week's game is the thing I talked about so much last week, and that's the poise at the quarterback position. Max Johnson was never shaken. He was never bothered. He stood in the pocket, and he made the throws he needed to make. Yes, he completed 10 out of 20 passes for 140 yards and 1 touchdown. But he also added some running, and he made really important throws when he needed to move this offense up and down the field when they needed to move it. The stars of the offense, in terms of playmaking, were Devon Achane and Aniyah Smith. And in a game when you are without your 2 flashy 5-star wide receiver freshmen in Evan Stewart and Chris Marshall, who, as I mentioned before, were suspended for the game. When you're without those 2 guys, Aniyah Smith and Devon Achane are going to be even more important than they are on a regular basis in an ongoing week. Aniyah Smith had 4 catches for 74 yards, almost 20 yards per catch, and did it in a way that was extremely important down in distances, extremely important situations within the game. They knew they could look to Aniyah and he would make the play, and he did. And Devon Achane was the do-everything man tonight. 88 yards rushing, 42 yards receiving, a receiving touchdown. Add into that 54 yards on 2 kickoff returns. Just an unbelievable effort. Nearly 200 total yards on the game. Unbelievable overall effort from Devon Achane, who was the entire offense against Appalachian State and continued to be, in this game, the most important and productive member of the A&M offense against Miami. I just cannot state enough, and I will state it over and over and over again, just how important the poise and composure and the experience of Max Johnson was in this game for the Aggies. The contrast between the way Max Johnson looked in this game from a composure standpoint, from operating the offense from down to down, compared to what we saw with Haynes King against Appalachian State is, and it literally night and day. Again, the numbers were not huge. They didn't really take very many, if any, shots deep down the field. And who knows what effect having a game plan built for a week with Evan Stewart and Chris Marshall included in that game plan looked like. But they didn't get to run that game plan out against Miami. So they didn't take any shots. There weren't any huge plays. But when they needed to move the ball, Max Johnson was able to put the offense in place where they needed to be. Another thing that can't be overstated is the impact of adding center Bryce Foster back into the mix. And we heard during the broadcast, ESPN had their injury expert on the broadcast talking about how remarkable it was that Bryce Foster was able to accomplish what he was able to accomplish by playing in this game and playing at the level that he was. And he was so important in this game as the Aggies finally seemed to get their running game going. And it slowed up a little bit in the fourth quarter when Miami knew that A&M was running the ball to try to run the clock out. But even then, on the last drive that A&M had the ball, on first down, they were able to get Devon Achane out for a first down run. But it just shows how much of a stabilizing force Bryce Foster is to this offense by plugging him in, combine that with the stabilizing force that Max Johnson was, and everything seemed to settle down. Again, not explosive, not what it's going to take to beat some of the teams you have to play later on in the schedule, but enough to win the game against Miami, a ranked opponent inside the top 15 that you were able to take down at home and handle your business. In a week after you didn't handle your business against Appalachian State, to come in at home in prime time on national television when all of these eyes have been on you for a week. ESPN moved College Game Day from College Station, where it had been planned to be for months, to Boone, North Carolina, to celebrate the fact that Appalachian State had upset you. And A&M put the performance on the field tonight that they needed to following that up. There's plenty of room for them to get better. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But for tonight, A&M accomplished what they needed to accomplish. As we talk about this A&M team going forward for the rest of the 2022 season, as they look towards the game against Arkansas, who had a very hard-fought game this week, it's going to be really important, the health of the defense. Again, we saw 2 guys go out to suspension. Those guys will be back next week. Should be no problem. We're going to check on the health of Antonio Johnson. We're going to see how he's doing. Hopefully, Bryce Foster continues to his recovery from his illness, from mono. He'll be back up closer to full speed by next week against Arkansas. And hopefully, we can get these freshmen back, these 4 guys, get those guys back in the fold, and be ready to go against Arkansas in what will be a huge game. It's so important for us to acknowledge tonight the unbelievable, and I'm going to say it again, the unbelievable effort that this A&M defense put forth against Miami. Tyler Van Dyke, a guy who's, like I said a minute ago, going to be a first or second round pick, more than likely, in the 2023 NFL draft. Threw the ball 41 times, completed only 21 for only 217 yards. Just about 10 yards per completion, about 5 yards per attempt. No sacks, no interceptions, no huge plays from the defense, but just good defense. Now, Miami was without their top wide receiver who hurt his foot in practice this week. And they were able to rush for 170 yards about on the night. But A&M stood tall when they needed to stand tall in situational defense, in the red zone, and on third downs. And I can't say enough about it because it was an unbelievable effort from that defense. They were on the field so much, especially in the third and fourth quarters. It's really somewhat remarkable. I'll say it this way. Miami got the ball about 9 seconds into the fourth quarter. A&M punted on the first play of the fourth quarter. And A&M downed the ball at the 1-yard line with 14 minutes and 51 seconds left in the quarter. Miami had a 16-play, 83-yard drive from the 1-yard line all the way to the A&M 16-yard line, and A&M stood up in the red zone and forced a field goal. Then the A&M offense proceeds to go 3 and out, take only 1 minute and 26 seconds off the clock, and Miami got the ball back with 7:06 on the clock. Then they ran 6 more plays, only gained 17 yards, but ran 6 more plays, ran 4 more minutes off the clock. That's 10 minutes of offense in just the fourth quarter. 10 minutes on defense. And then A&M gets the ball back again, this time at their own 7-yard line. Runs a 4-play drive for 10 yards. Devon Achane gets a first down on the first run of the drive. And then they wind up punting 3 plays later. Only take 1 minute and 53 seconds off. And then A&M, with 1 minute and 15 seconds left in the game, or 1 minute 16 left in the game, Miami gets the ball. And A&M is able to come up with a stop and force a turnover on downs. They gave up a first down on the first play and then forced Miami a turnover on downs. Those 3 defensive series from A&M could have flipped the game. They were on defense for 11 out of the 15 minutes of the fourth quarter and gave up a grand total of 3 points. That is unbelievably high level, situational, and just clutch defensive play in a game where you needed it, in a week where you needed it, and you're going to keep needing it as this offense starts to get its legs under it with Max Johnson at the helm. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. It was a great game, a fun game to watch, even if it was not the prettiest and most explosive offensive game. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for listening. Please find us on Twitter at Locked On Aggies. You can find me on Twitter at Joey Ikes. You can follow us on YouTube. Please do that. We're trying to grow this channel, get it to 1,000 subscribers by the Alabama game, which is October the 8th. Would love it if that would happen. Locked On Aggies on YouTube. Like us, comment the videos, share the videos, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time we post a video. Find us on your podcast platform of choice. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review there as well. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey. We're on all of them. We're here every day with the analysis and the breaking news. We follow the recruiting. We follow all of it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now that you've made Locked On Aggies your first listen, go check out Locked On SEC, where host Chris Gordy takes you around the SEC in 30 minutes or less with help from the local experts of the Locked On Network. That's Locked On SEC. Make it your second listen. Thank you so much. Enjoy the weekend. We will see you on Monday.